Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on the map Bjornling's Gathering, playing as the vampire counts against the forces of the Tomb Kings. So this is definitely one of the rougher matchups, though in this situation I did luck out a little bit for the vampire counts, because the Tomb Kings constructs have very high armor, and the vampire counts don't really have the best of armor-piercing anti-large. They've got skeleton spears, which aren't great for that. Blood Knights don't have armor-piercing, though they still have a decent amount in their weapon strength. And Terrorgheist, although very potent, don't have the best survivability against the Tomb Kings, because Tomb Kings have a reasonable amount of fire damage. Their Regiment of Renowned Necrosphinx can cause fire and magical damage, so they can have some very, very potent counters. Same with the Hyro Titans. So they've got some very potent counters against what the vampire counts can put on the table. And with this build, I was trying to kind of counteract the Tomb Kings and just see what I could do to really punish them and hopefully beat them down. For my lord, I decided to bring a Red Duke, and of course he is a pretty decent choice. Obviously, I don't want to get netted and shot to death by enemy Ushabti Greatbows, so I did bring the Red Duke on a horse, which will make him a little more survivable. He does have Van Hel's Dance Macabre, which of course is a great little melee attack and speed buff. He does have Invocation of Neck for the heals, and then Raise the Dead, and El Sif, which is a great debuff to enemy heroes and lords and all that sort of stuff. And it'll hopefully allow some of my Terrorgeists to do more damage to him if I need to goon him. Alongside him, I do have a Vampire of Shadows, and this is a hero I've been experimenting more and more with. I used to use these guys a bit as a crutch, especially Vampires of Death, but lately I've just been using them as a conventional sort of caster, finally going back to using them. They are a bit expensive, but you do have Immortal Will, which is a great little self-heal. You do have Occam's Mind Razor, which is a great melee attack boost, gives you plus 40% damage. And also imbues magical damage to units. So against, I don't think there's very many units with physical resistance, but I do believe there are a few for the Tomb King, so it can definitely be potent there. And then finally we do have Enfeebling Foe, which is kind of a supplement for El Sif, just to debuff enemy troops a little further. The front line is composed of Graveguard and the Stearnsman. Very small, but this is really all you need, because Tomb King infantry is kind of trashy, and Graveguard are more than adequate against them. It's kind of like against Bretonnia. Out on the flanks, I do have the Dire Pack, as well as a unit of Dire Wolves, who are trying to kind of flank into my opponent's backline. They're just there to shut down my opponent's backline troops as best they can. Obviously, they will probably die, but that doesn't really matter. You can see Stearnsman already taking a volley from the Cask of Souls. And on the flank, I do have the Feasters and Dusk, and these guys are, of course, Crypt Ghouls that move a little faster and have stalk, so they're very, very potent in their own right. And they can definitely tear through Tomb King infantry pretty effectively, and of course, because they don't break, I'm hoping that if I can get them on the opponent's backline, they can really lay the smack down. I do have 2 Terrorgeists up in the sky, try to shut down enemy large monsters. With that poison, with that armor-piercing damage, they do actually have a very significant bonus against large. I do believe about 30, which should make them much more potent. Actually, 35, so that should make them much more potent against units like the Tomb Scorpion or the Tomb King and that sort of, and actually even the Casket of Souls. For my opponent, he did decide to bring a front line of Skeleton Warriors, dirt cheap, but will hold because they're unbreakable. 2 units of Carrion, which I think is not really good against the Vampire counts. You get because the Carrion doesn't really have much to do against Vampire counts. Vampire counts don't have much of a backline. What units they do have that play a little more safely aren't really going to be bothered too much by Carrion. For example, it's not like you're going to pick off a Corpse Guard with these guys. So I think they're a bit unnecessary, but they are pretty cheap. Down behind that, my opponent does have 2 units of Tomb Guard ready to kind of shut down any large monsters trying to flank around the back. He does have a Tomb King on a War Sphinx, a 2 Scorpion just to tear through my infantry and really kind of make his lord very, very tanky. Fortunately, it's not Cetra, but very, very potent here, and he does have good variety of abilities here. Tomb Strike, which is a great melee attack buff, even though Terror won't be relevant here. Reanimate for the leadership, which is very solid there. A Lich Priest of Light with Fate of Buna, or sorry, not Fate of Buna, with Banishment, Net of a Mintok, as well as False Protection. In my opinion, Net of a Mintok is actually better now than it used to be, because it's so cheap and spammable. He also does have the Curse of Zara when he drops below 50% health, which is a pretty potent armor debuff. With a unit of Ushabti here in the front line, that should definitely make it more difficult for my Graveguard to plow through. And my opponent does also have the Chosen of the Gods, who you can see are just wailing on this Terrorgeist, already knocking it down by about 1,000 HP. Despite the fact that these guys have those weird scatter arrows, the scatter arrows actually tend to do quite a bit of damage to Terrorgeist. Finally, my opponent does have the mighty Casket of Souls, which is over here kind of teeing off on my troops, but I do get a nice surround on it here with the Dire Pack, who immediately start whittling it down. The Dire Pack is definitely not bad against large, especially on the charge here. You can see they've already knocked down by a couple hundred HP, as the carrion do swoop down to try to interdict, but I'm just committing so many troops here, just trying to prevent my opponent's Casket of Souls from firing. The Terrorgheist actually gets a pick on the Chosen of the Gods. An entire model goes down instantly to the breath attack, which, given that my opponent doesn't have Arcan, that is a pretty good investment there, a pretty good kill there. Unfortunately, that breath attack over there was pretty atrocious. I guess I was getting disrupted by the shooting. And you can see the Terrorgeists are definitely getting kind of beaten down, and so I decided to start moving them away and attacking the Shopti here in the front line, because the Shopti here are kind of isolated, and they're pretty easy pickings for the Terrorgeists, who just do so much damage. You can see they've already picked the model off. Yes, the Invocation, and you can see the Invocation of the Nag is now going down to just heal this front line up a bit. You can see the Vampire of Shadows here hacking and slashing through the skeletons. Graveguard here just slowly but surely chewing through this Tomb Guard with halberds, as my opponent's heal does go off. In the back line, the Dire Pack and the Dire Wolves are getting massacred. But that was to be expected. The Tomb Scorpion will actually do better against these guys because they are considered an infantry or small entity. So the Tomb Scorpion actually does get a bonus against them. Here in the backline, though, the Feasters and Dust are closing in as my opponent is trying to reposition the Casket of Souls to a safer area. He does try to engage the Terrorgheist here, but Terrorgheist actually, with their bonus against large and the debuff from Ilseef, are going to be able to cause so much hurt on this guy, because he's already down to 6,500 HP, and he does get fast protection, but he's just getting melted by these angry Terrorgeists. Though in turn, he is definitely causing quite a bit of damage. You can see this poor Terrorgeist getting beaten down. But now I do get an overcasted version of Occam's Mindraiser, and you can see it does go down on these guys, and they get plus 40% weapon strength, so they're going to be hitting like absolute trucks right now. Almost 600 weapon strength on the Terrorgeists. You can see they're just picking apart this Tomb King with a ridiculous speed, and he's really going to have to try to push away, try to escape this horrendous situation before he gets torn apart by those angry Terrorgeists. In the meantime, a spell does go down. I do believe it's the curse from the Tomb King. You can see he's melting down my Graveguard, melting down the Stearnsmen. The Tomb King is able to kind of pull away through his own troops, as the Terrorgeists are kind of like meandering around. But that said, the Graveguard has pushed through, and they're going to collapse these Skeleton Warriors, and I decided to kind of commit to finishing off these Shopti, realizing that I'm not going to really be able to catch the Lord right now. I do cast an Enfeebling Foe, kind of with hoping to get that the Terrorgeists would push through, but the Terrorgeists are getting snagged up on models, and definitely a bit of an issue there. The Carrion do decide to rear charge the Graveguard. Not a bad idea to try to get that rear charge, but Graveguard do have bonus against infantry, so they'll hit them somewhat consistently. My opponent, though, here he definitely gets a little cheeky, and despite being hit by Enfeebling Foe, tries to charge in with his Tomb King against the Terrorgeists, which is a big mistake, and you can see he immediately gets bitten in the rear, in the posterior there, by the two very, very angry bats. And in the meantime, here in the pits, the Vampire is helping the Tomb Guard, helping clear out the Tomb Guard, just slugging it out with them. Over here, you can see the Graveguard has pushed in and is tying down the Shopti, the Great Bows, and the Lich Priest of Light is over there, just sitting around, actually, I think. But the Graveguard is pushing through. You can see the Feasters and the Dust just constantly harassing its Casket of Souls. My opponent really isn't able to shake them. They do have a decent amount of HP, models still. Obviously, they're not going to do particularly well. The Casket of Souls does have almost 100 armor, 80 armor, and of course these guys, despite causing poison, their weapon strength is actually pretty low, as well, their armor-piercing weapon strength. I'm going to try to find them here. That's Graveguard. But their weapon strength is pretty... Either way, their weapon strength against armor is pretty low. I think they have like 2 armor-piercing, 3 armor-piercing... Yeah, 4. So nothing impressive, but slowly but surely they are whittling that thing down. And the Graveguard is collapsed, and they're also helping collapse these Tomb Guard. Stearnsmen have finally finished off almost everything except the Carrion. You can see the Tomb King here just getting annihilated by the Ilseef and the angry Terrorgeists, and you can see the Terrorgeist still pretty healthy. Obviously, helped along by the fact that my opponent does not have any source of fire damage, and now you can see the Stearnsmen are piling in as this guy's crumbling, and the Terrorgeist is trying to push in and get a bite. But unfortunately, I do then get it back up into the air, so that definitely wasted a little bit of time. And now you can see, though, it's still pursuing. It's still in hot pursuit, and it does land here to get a tasty chunk out of the Tomb King. And definitely these Terrorgeists are some monsters in the night. The Chosen of the Gods tanking it out. Obviously, Graveguard, or zombies even, a zombie summon here is not going to kill him very quickly, or even kill him at all, really. But it doesn't really matter. You can see I'm getting a breath attack off on the Tomb King, and that is going to be the end of him as he gets felled almost instantly, leaving only the Tomb Scorpion, a Lich Priest of Nakara. Interesting choice to bring 2 casters. I think a Necrotect would have been better here. And you can see my opponent's army at this point does start to collapse and crumble and all that good stuff as he's down to really his last legs. And of course, the Terrorgeists are still very good against those units. Was this an sort of optimal army, or was this the army you'd... I don't know. It's a little difficult to say. I think it's about as good of an army as you're going to get with vampire accounts. The problem they have, of course, is that Necrosphinxes and Higher Titans are incredibly powerful. They have armor piercing, they have fire damage, they have magic damage. And so against Terrorgheist, who of course have regeneration, they're hitting even harder. But at the same time, their armor is very high, and they can normally just stand on top of their infantry. Let's say they can stand on their Tomb Guard with halberds, and they can just slug it out with you. So getting on top of them is actually rather difficult, and that is why I think the Terrorgeists are a good choice in this situation. Just because they can get in there and help get into that front, get on top of these monsters. You can see they did a lot of damage here. Obviously, with the help from El Sif and the Vampire of Shadows' enfeebling foe, they could do rather well against just about any large target. The Graveguard, of course, are great. The Graveguard, some of them crumbled, but it doesn't really matter. They managed to slog their way through that front line, incurring very few casualties, and really trouncing kind of my opponent's troops, my opponent's infantry corps, and those Carrion as well. The Carrion, of course, did an okay job against the Direwolves, who were trying to pick apart the Casket of Souls, but they couldn't really do much to the Graveguard, who just chopped them to bits. The Tomb Guard held a little better, but still they're more expensive than Graveguard, and their armor piercing didn't really help them enough to win. Shopti got picked apart by the Terrorgeists, and yeah, the Chosen of the Isles got some damage in, but once again, not the greatest. They were getting bogged down quite a bit by various units. Tomb Scorpion just trying to save that Casket of Souls the whole game, but that was very difficult. I definitely think you have to be a bit innovative with vampire accounts if you're trying to play against the Tomb Kings. I think Terrorgeists are probably the way to go. The Blood Knights might be viable if you're able to bait your opponent out somehow to expose his monsters, or if you're able to quickly destroy his infantry line. Then it might be Blood Knights are probably much more viable. The problem is the Blood Knights against the Shopti Great Bows, against the Chosen of the Gods, are just not that great. They're obviously going to take some time to pick apart those big monsters because they don't have the greatest armor piercing. So if you don't have a way to isolate those monsters, it can be very, very difficult. If you can isolate them, though, then they're definitely very potent. So nonetheless, a great game to my opponent. Definitely was a pretty fun match, and very interesting to test out the Terrorgeist. You can see here gain a bunch of chevrons. And yeah, I think this is a viable build. I'm not entirely sure what I would change if I were to shake things up a bit, because I do think you need to apply some backline pressure with cheaper troops like Direwolves and Direpack. Definitely think the Terrorgeists are pretty solid. And yeah, I think this is a pretty solid build overall. You guys can let me know what you think. I definitely think that for my opponent, he should have done some things a little differently. I would have dropped the Casket of Souls, try to get the Regiment of Renowned Necrosphinx in there. Definitely probably drop the Carrion because you don't really need them. Try to get some slightly better monstrous troops in there, especially if you could get either a Higher Titan or a Necrosphinx. That could be very potent. But nonetheless, great game to my opponent. I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions, or anything like that, be sure to post them down in the comments, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.